Hello and welcome to Analog Insights. In today's episode, I review the Leica Lab 35mm f1.4 Double Aspherical, which is an homage to arguably one of the most legendary and interesting Leica M lenses ever produced, and that is, of course, the Leica Summilux Double Aspherical, which was produced from 1989 to 1994, and only about 2,000 units are known to exist. And a lens in great condition with box and papers, can easily cost 28 to 35,000 US dollars, and you might wonder what is so special about this original that true collectors are really seeking like a white whale. So what is so special? The lens with the famous order number 11873 was a bridge between the vintage Mandler glow era and the modern high resolution era at Leica. And this double aspherical is a masterpiece of over-engineering in many ways, because at the time of its release, Leica had not yet perfected the pressed or molded aspherical glass technology which is used today. So unlike modern lenses where aspherical elements are molded into shape, the two aspherical surfaces in this lens were ground and polished by hand on the very same device that was also used to create the asphere in the 50mm f1.2 Noctilux lens back then. And this process was so labor intensive and resulted in such a high failure rate that allegedly Leica was losing money on every lens sold. And the lens here featured 9 elements in 5 groups. By using 2 aspherical surfaces, Leica achieved a level of wide open sharpness and correction that was unheard of in 1990. And you can easily recognize an original as it features a aspherical inscription on the front ring, while the later mass-produced version after 1994 only features an ASPH dot. So even a version in bad condition of the original cost at least 12,000 US dollars. So it makes perfect sense for Leica Lab to tackle this particular lens here, and they are offering it the double aspherical homage here for 1,200 euro. They had announced this intention years ago, and it took apparently a couple of iterations to not only get the look right on a film M camera, but also to optimize the look for modern high-resolution sensors on digital Leica M cameras. And by now, the result is an interesting blend, I would call it, that stays true or aims to stay true to the original, while also improving on based on what is possible today. I took the lens out for street shots in Madrid and Florence with all sorts of different color negative and black and white films, and of course I did have quite some sun but also some overcast days, so we get a really nice mixture in the look, and the lens really played out all its different characteristics and possibilities. And I also used it for a recent small editorial shoot at a Five Guys here in Munich, shooting some Kodak Portra 800 with a friend. As always, these films were developed and scanned by my trusted On-Film Lab in Frankfurt, and I can't wait to share the results here with you and take a closer look at this very, very special lens. The faithful homage by Leica Lab was released in 2 different waves. First, a special limited edition made from titanium in December 2025, and then the official silver and black version made from aluminum in January 2026. The company used precision molded and manually polished aspherical elements to achieve a similar but also superior look to the original. And of course, due to today's production capabilities, it did not struggle with the same high failure rate as Leica did in the 1990s. The original optical design of 9 elements in 5 groups is retained, and the 2 spherical elements are marked here. Light Lens Lab also uses newly developed extra low dispersion and achromatic elements to effectively reduce distortion, diffraction, and chromatic aberrations. The signature rendering and glow is retained through the use of lanthanide-infused optical elements, the same secret sauce that originally helped create the legendary Mandler glow on the vintage Leica lenses. Light Lens Lab claims to design, manufacture, and assemble all mechanical and optical components in-house, and of course this is quite a feat for such a young company, and it shows the maturity that the company has achieved by now. Of course, there are some critics out there who have disassembled Light Lens Lab lenses before and point out the limited repairability of those lenses, and yet the company really stayed true to its original ambition and its vision of making collector pieces accessible to the regular Leica M shooter, and this is a great case in point here with the 1,200 euro that this lens costs here, which is, in my opinion, a fantastic price for a 35mm f1.5 lens with 2 aspherical elements. Of course, it hits a little bit above the Folklander and Thypoc price points if you compare it to other 35mm lenses in their portfolios. And yet it's a far cry from an original Leica Summilux 35mm aspherical that you can still purchase new today. So in my opinion, this is a very competitive and nice pricing. The lens features 10 aperture blades that stop down from f1.4 to f16 and half stops, and it comes with the E46 filter size and support for clip-on lens hoods. The minimum focusing distance is 0.7 meters, and the aluminum version weighs 278 grams, while the titanium version weighs around 300 grams. My silver aluminum version here comes with a leather lens pouch, matching front and back caps, matching 12-587 lens hood, a box, instructions, and even a 1-year Light Lens Lab warranty. So quite a package for the money that you're paying. The lens is well manufactured and all the mechanical elements feel very nice in my opinion, and you can get custom engravings on the front ring of up to 8 letters, I think, for an additional $100 US, which of course is nice if you're, want to mark it as a present or something similar to commemorate a special occasion. What I found interesting is that this lens was made available in the 3 different styles, and especially that there is a silver version, because the original lens was only available in black, and there was one silver prototype that belonged to a Leica executive and is considered a true unicorn among collectors. Because unlike the aluminum production models, it was made of solid brass and finished in silver chrome, and it was also significantly heavier as a result of that, with around 400 gram versus a 300 gram. And the lens, the original silver one, occasionally shows up at high-end auctions for like 6-figure sums, which of course is not particularly accessible. And at least from my perspective, knowing this backstory, this silver version here is particularly interesting, and I was not as intrigued by the limited edition titanium version as others were, because I know this particular backstory here. So of course you can also just get the black one, but I would encourage you to take the silver version here into consideration as well, because it's really, really special. But how does the lens perform optically? The original is famous for its 3D pop and high center sharpness, combined with a beautiful painterly bokeh in the background. And apparently the original combined a beautiful Leica glow when shot wide open at f1.4, but once you stop down to f2 and beyond, you get a beautiful high resolution sharpness and especially center sharpness. And I would say the Light Lens Lab lives up to the same characteristics as the original and even improves on them. What I found interesting is seeing a side-by-side comparison over at Bobby Tonelli's YouTube channel, where he got the opportunity to try the original and really compare them side by side. And what was noticeable is that the bokeh of the Light Lens Lab version is even more beautiful than the original. So the original was a little bit more busy and had these onion rings and so on. And here you can really see how much effort Light Lens Lab put into the multiple prototypes and iterations that they did to optimize on the look and feel of this bokeh. So now you get a beautiful creamy transition from the in-focus areas in the front, especially in the center, towards the back. And in my opinion, this, as a result of all this, the lens produces a beautiful subject isolation that is particularly well suited for shooting portraits and street shots where the center of attention is in the middle of your frame. The overall rendering is an interesting blend, in my opinion, between a classic vintage lens and a modern lens. So you do get quite some center sharpness and also sharpness across the entire frame once you stop down a little bit, but it's not clinically sharp. What is sometimes disturbing about the modern, highly corrected aspherical Leica lenses and apochromatic lenses is that they feel a little bit too sharp and they're losing a little bit of soul, and this here is a very, very nice sweet spot where you can feel, okay, Light Lens Lab put in additional elements, they optimized on the original lens design and used the modern capabilities 30 years later or over 30 years later to improve on the original. Of course, when shooting against the sun without a lens hood, you still get occasionally some ghosting and a little bit of flaring. But of course, it's far away from what the original would show here. As mentioned, once you stop down to f2.8 and beyond, the lens becomes noticeably sharper and you get a lot more micro contrast across the entire frame. And the range between f2.8 to 5.6, I would say, is perfect for shooting immersive portraits and beautiful street shots that retain a little bit of an interesting look, because you can see there is some bokeh going on. You get a little bit of softness towards the corners, but in a very nice immersive way. Overall, the color rendering is also fantastic, and I particularly like the look of the Kodak Kodacolor 100 frames from Madrid and Florence, but also the Kodak Portra 800 frames from the Five Guys editorial. So beautiful colors in my opinion, and while there is some field curvature and corner softness when shot wide open, there's really nothing to complain about this lens. In my opinion, Light Lens Lab did an amazing job with this one. They really nailed it, and I can highly recommend taking a look at it. It's a beautiful lens to photograph with. So what about the handling and my personal impressions? Picking up the lens for the very first time feels very nice. The heft, the smooth operation and the finish feel perfect. This is a high quality product that certainly lives up to its price point even before you mount it to a camera. In use, it is one of the nicest 35mm lenses that I've ever used on my Leica M cameras, and I don't say that lightly. I am, as you know, currently a huge fan of the Thypoxana lens as an everyday, small, compact 35mm lens that is really used a lot on my Leica M cameras. And yet, if I want to create special images and I'm looking for a particularly nice lens, I'm picking up this 35mm Light Lens Lab version here. It is, yeah, without a doubt, one of the most interesting lenses released this year. And my personal mental ranking goes like this now for 35mm lenses. There is on the very first spot, there is the 35mm Leica Noctilux, a fantastic lens that comes at an incredible price point, offers a beautiful sharpness wide open, a beautiful pleasing bokeh. But if you don't want to afford it, you go to rank 2, and for me that is the 35mm Leica Summilux Spherical. Again, a fantastic lens, but very, very pricey. And if you don't want to afford that, but still get some of that bokeh and look and center sharpness, this is where for me the Leica Lab Double Aspherical comes in. It checks all my personal boxes. It is a perfect lens in many, many ways, optically, cosmetically. It's just a very, very nice lens. I had to look for a long time to find the downside, and for me personally, it's a very, very small detail. To my eyes, the inscription for the meters here, the M, looks a little bit out of proportion, a little bit larger. The feet looks perfect to me, but the M looks a little bit off. This is a very, very small detail, I'm aware of that, but it was hard to find anything to complain about. For me and the kind of look that I'm looking for, it's the perfect lens. Of course, the optical performance is a matter of taste. So if you want something sharper, I would always point you in the direction of the 35mm APO Summicron or the 35mm Ultron f2 in the Folklander realm. These are clinically sharp lenses. If that is important to you for landscape photography or similar, go for those. Or if you want a lens with an even more vintage character, I would point you in the direction of the pre-aspherical Leica Summilux and Leica Summicron lenses. Of course, these are great if that is important to you to get that classic mandala glow. But if you want something in between that offers great value for the money, I think this is an almost perfect lens. So what do we do with all this information? In classic literature, we learned that it is sometimes unwise to chase for the white whale. And I would argue it is the same here, because that white whale might end up consuming you, just like in literature. It's the same here. It's a fortune to spend on the original lens, and I believe it's so much wiser to go for the Leica Lab than the original. And that side-by-side comparison by Bobby Tonelli really took that point home to me, that the Leica Lab lens is actually a better lens. And for those out there that just want to shoot it and use it for photography, I would highly recommend taking a look at it. And this is coming from someone who can really relate to and understand Leica collectors and those often going an extra mile to hunt down a particular Leica vintage lens that they are looking for and the character that they love. But here you really get the better lens by purchasing the Leica Lab version. For me, this is also a luxury lens and a little bit comparable to that dark navy cashmere sweater that, in my opinion, every man should have in their staple of clothes. This is something that you give to yourself and that you ideally have a lifetime. So this is for me the kind of premium 35mm lens that everyone should have in their Leica M lens collection. And if you don't have anything like that yet, if you only have a daily carry 35mm that is compact and nice and so on, or you bought one of those early Folklander lenses at some point and now you look for something really, really special, I think this is the perfect lens. For me, this is what it represents in my collection. Of course, the only downside is it's a matter of vanity. It's not a Leica lens. But if you don't care about that, and I personally don't care about that, then it's the perfect lens to buy for that amount of money. And as I've said, you might get lucky, get a discount here and there. And then it's a really, really nice lens and a lot of value for the money. So, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Analog Insights and my review of the Light Lens Lab 35mm f1.4 Double Aspherical homage. This is exactly how such a lens should feel, in my opinion. It offers one of the most interesting 35mm renderings and optical designs available for the Leica M mount right now. It gives you an appealing mix of vintage and modern feel that accurately reproduces the famous Leica glow when shot wide open at f1.4. But once you stop down, you get a lot of sharpness and micro contrast and a really, really nice sharp lens. And in my opinion, it's one of the best values for the money that you can get right now. It is, of course, not a clinically sharp and overcorrected lens, but it is arguably the best buy out there. Again, I've said that before, if you want a more compact and lighter, smaller lens, I would point you in the direction of the Thypoc Xana lens, the f2, or if you really want to have that f1.4, the Vogtländer Nocton version 2 is also interesting. But in terms of character, quality, feel, and all these other aspects, this lens here is outstanding. And in my opinion, it can also nicely complement one of the other lenses mentioned. For me, this is the dark navy cashmere sweater that everyone should have in their lens collection or in their clothes collection. It is perfect in so many ways, and yeah, a really, really nice one. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like it and maybe even share it with your friends. And if you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe to our channel. Jules, Greg, and I really appreciate each and every subscriber coming our way. So thanks for watching. I hope to see you soon. Bye.